Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Kendra.
And this is the Christ Centered Life Podcast. Today,
You're welcome.
today we're talking about our engagement and what we've learned so far.
Oh boy. Get the popcorn.
There we go. And cut. No. All right. So first we're going to talk about our engagement story. And I don't know, do you want to tell it or do you want me to tell it?
I can give it a little bit and then you could talk about the back end of it if
Sure.
that sounds good.
Sure.
So I knew that Mark was going to propose at some point because we're planning people and there's just not planning.
There's no hiding it.
There's no hiding things. And I think it's important too, just starting it out, that you should talk about engagement. When you start thinking about engagement and you're dating someone that seriously, engagement shouldn't be a shock to one of the people. It should be a conversation that you're having. It doesn't mean you can't surprise them. Mark still surprised me. Like, I didn't know when he was gonna propose. I didn't know where. Like, I didn't know who would be there.
How,
nothing. I didn't know
why.
that. But I knew that we were at the stage to go through an engagement. So I think that's important. And we did talk about it. We talked about it enough. We did look at wedding venues before we were engaged. But we had to because of COVID. There was a ton of weddings that had to get moved. And so finding a place has been very difficult. And we knew that we wanted to get engaged. We knew that he was thinking about either doing the Marines or Focus, and that meant we needed to get married at a certain time. And like when you were still thinking about doing the Marines, I
don't think we were. Oh, I guess early on in the idea of getting engaged.
The idea of getting engaged, we were we need to get married by this, like by the end of July. That was me. I was like, I don't want to start.
I don't remember that.
I do, because you were like, I was mapping out your training if you did become a Marine and stuff, and I was like, I don't want to be alone. Like, don't leave me alone. So I was like, you have to marry me so I can travel with you. By this certain
That's ringing
date.
a bell now.
Yeah. So we were looking at venues, trying to get a spot. My sister's also getting married this summer, and so we didn't want to conflict with hers. So we were just looking, seeing what our options were, and then.
I think an important key that you hit there is talking about marriage. I mean, we talked about marriage.
Kind of early.
Pretty within 3 months. Yeah. Would you say?
Not in the sense of, hey, I'm gonna marry you, but. Hey,
what do you think about what do you think about marriage? What are
we were dating intentionally?
Yeah, exactly. Dating intentionally with the intent of this person's. I'm either going to break up with them, or this is something I see that could possibly become, a person I can marry.
Yeah, that was like the biggest key. Was I didn't tell him I was going to marry him on month 3, but it was after 3 months you kind of get a sense of either this is going to work or this isn't going to work. So either we need to break up mutually because this isn't.
You don't see a future.
You don't see a future. You shouldn't be like dating as a Catholic, dating as a Christian should be intentional, and you should. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about everything, and we went to go look at rings, and I thought I'm not much of a decision maker, but for some reason on that day I knew exactly what I wanted. And I couldn't give him any options. It was bad with the rings. I gave him one option.
You're definitely way more decisive. She was way more decisive on that day than I'd seen her before.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
For sure. I saw a ring and I was like, I think this is. I can give you more. I can give you more options, but it was like.
And I'd like to tease you a little bit here. So before us walking in there, Kendra's like, if the ring's above. What did you say? Like
$500.
Yeah, you said something ridiculous. You're like, if the ring's above $500, I don't want it. Like, that's not me. I'm not going to do that.
We don't need to say how much it is, though.
Yeah, no, we won't.
No.
But it was above that. So it was kind of funny. And then she's like, all right, I'll pick out 3 rings. And then you can come back when I'm not there and pick one. Not what happened.
That's not what happened.
But it was totally fine.
He mutually thought that it was like.
Oh yeah,
the ring.
No, that ring is so you. 100%. That ring is you.
Yeah.
It's good.
But So that was kind of how the talk started, and so I knew he had a ring coming. I didn't know when it was coming or when he was going to propose, what that was going to look like or anything, but I knew that we went to a store, we looked at the ring, and I knew that he bought it. So I knew it was coming eventually, but I didn't actually know when, and I thought I knew when he was going to. He invited me to go hiking one morning at like 6 in the morning. And I was like, oh gosh, this is it, guys. But I kind of thought if he didn't propose on this hike, then we were going to end up getting Waffle Shop, and he was going to propose on a stack of pancakes. And I was like, please don't.
For the record, I would never propose at a Waffle Shop, nor a restaurant.
If you did, that's fine. That's just not us.
That is not me. I don't recommend proposing at the Waffle Shop.
Yeah, the Waffle Shop.
But, yeah.
So I was really devastated. I thought on this hike he was going to propose.
So the reason she was so devastated, I think, you can speak for yourself, but it was kind of that hike is a very significant place for us. It was a place of our first date and stuff, and so I wanted to go there, and definitely seemed like it might have been a place to do it.
Yeah, and I wanted him to, and he put his hand in his pocket, and it looked like he was about to pull out a ring. And I got up early to make sure my hair looked nice on a hike.
Yeah.
And then he didn't. He just bent down and tied his shoe or something. And I was like, "Are you really faking me out right now?"
And
he was like, "I'm not fake. What are you talking about?" I was so caught by
surprise with that because I forget. I was checking my pocket to see if I had my keys because shoot, do I have my keys? And then I was like, oh, my shoes laces untied. She was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what? What's going on?
Yeah. So I kind of stomped out of the hike. I didn't stomp, but I definitely was sad.
You're definitely sad. But
I was. But I was also kind of relieved because it was also the weekend of your Zetta's funeral.
It was
and I was
weekend.
I really hope he doesn't propose this weekend because it's such a sad, somber time. So maybe this wasn't, maybe he just wanted to go on this hike to clear his head, whatever, and he just wants to get breakfast. But that's not what happened.
Indeed.
I'll let you jump in.
So from there, we didn't get breakfast, right?
We did. We went to the Waffle Shop.
We did?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
He doesn't even
Too many
remember.
concussions. But so we went to the Waffle Shop and then had a great breakfast. Of course, the Waffle Shop being the best breakfast place in town, as Kendra's attests to. Then we went back to her place, and I was recruiting her best friend at the time, Lindsay, was helping out a lot with it. I was let her in on what was going on. And I was trying to figure out how the heck I was going to get Kendra to the Arboretum, because I was going to propose at the Arboretum.
That was also part of our first date, yeah.
Also part of the first date. And so I was like, gosh. And so I had Lindsay suggest that we all go to the Arboretum. I think Lindsay's like, I want to go to the Arboretum and get some cool pictures or something. Very social person.
Yeah, and she likes to get her pictures taken.
Yeah.
For the gram.
The gram.
Yeah.
And so, that wasn't, Kendra heard that, and I don't think you were like, oh, this is it, or whatever. But then you got a dress just a few days before or something,
yeah, that was
right?
red, yeah.
Yeah, and so she was like, oh man, I'm really excited. I want to show you this sometime. I don't know when I'll wear it, but I'm really excited to show you. And I was like, this is the perfect time. I'm like, you should wear it. I think you should wear it. I think it would be great. Go to the Arboretum. Maybe you get some pictures, And so Lindsay backed me up there, and we went to the Arboretum and walked around a bit, and my parents were also involved.
And I thought they had left to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. They did drive off and stuff.
His dad was not in a part of the loop. So he also was just as confused as me. Because your mom did not, we stopped by their house on the way to the Arboretum. Lindsay, Mark, and I.
We did indeed.
We did stop. And his dad was in the kitchen, and he was like, oh, we're about to go to Pittsburgh. And I was like, cool, we're going to stop by the Arboretum. He's like, oh, man, you guys watch the time. There's stuff going on in Pittsburgh. You know how long the drive is. And so Chris and I are both like, yes, Pittsburgh, Arboretum, then we'll go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And your mom played it so well. And
Oscar
was just
performance. An Oscar performance.
Yeah. And then got in the car and was like, Chris, we're going to the Arboretum. So they kept Chris in the dark, too. So I feel like I have an outline.
I can't remember if he was in the dark or just forgot.
I don't know.
I'll have to ask you. Dad. But anyway, yeah, we go to the Arboretum, and we're walking around, taking a big lap of the place. It was a beautiful day.
It was.
And, we get in this really cool place with these tall trees, and I go down on Lindsay was taking a selfie, and so all the eyes were on the camera. I'm like, this is perfect time. And so I went down on one knee, and Kendra saw in the phone that I was on one knee and turned around and, proposed. And so it went really well.
Over his words.
I did. I'm a big planner. I plan a lot. But in this case, I was like, you know what? The words will just come to me. It'll be, very fluid, very, very romantic if I just...
It wasn't.
It wasn't. It was pretty bad.
Got her.
I was like, yeah, still got the deal. Still got the yes. But, yeah, that was pretty...
What did you even say at the end?
I don't even remember.
It was so funny.
I don't even remember.
It was basically
bad.
I got her, snagged her or something. Like.
I said a great success.
Oh yeah.
After she said yes and stuff, I was like, great success. Oh, but yeah. So.
And then your parents came out of a bush.
Yeah, they were hiding in a bush the whole time, filming and taking pictures. Yeah, it was good.
It was really good.
So.
Yeah, and we got ice cream on the way to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Great
and I thought engagement was going to be magical. So what we're really here to talk about is what engagement's truly like.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had this beautiful story of the engagement, like that day. But engagement's not rainbows and unicorns.
No.
It's not like what the Hollywood makes it look like. And honestly, there was a moment where I was like, is this really what this is? Like, what happens?
Yeah. It's difficult.
It is hard. And so that's why we're here today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the difficulties and struggles and blessings and being engaged, you know. So I think the first topic is talking about, for us, not cohabitating. So, of course, I live at home with my folks, which this is where we're filming. Thanks again, Mom and Dad. So, and then she lives in her apartment and
with my friend Natalie.
With your friend Natalie.
And our 2 dogs.
And I think we'll go to a little queued up in the catechism with Kendra. A segment that's really naturally taken place because Kendra's always in the catechism.
I am.
So we got queued up in the catechism. Now, Kendra, what does the catechism say?
It says that during engagement, if you go to 2350, those who are engaged to marry are called to live chastity and continuance. They should see in this time of testing a discovery of mutual respect, an apprenticeship and fidelity, and the hope of receiving one another from God. They should reserve for marriage the expressions of affection that belong to married love. They will help each other grow in chastity. And the rest of this segment basically talks about what chastity looks like for people who are engaged and who are not. But then if you go farther into the catechism, actually if you go backwards, 1632, it talks more about how, what marriage looks like. And we actually have talked about a lot of this with our small group recently. They have a huge section on marriage.
We've got a lot of engaged people in our small group.
We do. Or looking at engagement, dating, etc. So they talk about the grace of the sacrament of matrimony. So basically marriage. In this whole segment, it talks about what that looks like. If you are dating someone who's not Catholic, I highly recommend that you go into this section. It starts at 1638. It'll talk about what this looks like if you're marrying someone who's Christian, who's non-Christian, if they're Catholic, what that looks like, how you can get married in the church, just basically how the sacrament would work. And then it also talks about the steps of that and the importance of openness of fertility. They talk about cohabitation, divorce, etc. They talk about all of that. So there's not really an explicit verse that I want to pull up today from that section like the one that I just did. But basically, they talk about how it's so important to understand the grace of this sacrament and what we're supposed to do to prepare. Mm-hmm. Which one of them is no cohabitation. Yeah. Which I think it's been really good for us, but it also can be really hard. And I'm sure people who are listening, if you're engaged and you're cohabitating, we're not here to shame you at all. Yeah, we're just here to give you some knowledge and some advice on how to handle that.
Yeah, for sure. And the church definitely, what's the word I'm looking for? Teaches that we should not cohabitate before marriage. Yep. Because you're putting yourself in the near occasion of sin. Not that you're automatically going to sin, but it'd be a lot easier to fall into that temptation, and so that's just putting yourself at a disadvantage there. And I mean, studies show that 78% of people that cohabitate before marriage end up in divorce. So just even from a numbers standpoint, that is a very large percentile, and not something I would want to do. I want to keep all the blessings, graces, and odds in my favor with that. So that's another one there. But I mean, so cohabitation has been good for us in the sense that it's not allowed us to fall for that kind of temptation. So that's been really good for us, but it's also difficult logistically.
Yeah, it is. And
very difficult logistically.
Before we talk about like the logistics, someone said to me, actually this was Natalie, when we were talking about cohabitation the other day, she was like, sometimes people see it as like this difficulty and a challenge, and like it's just what the church says. But she framed it so well in saying, if you cohabitate but you're trying not to have sex because we're supposed to have chastity, you're basically training yourselves not to be open to sex. Like, you're ruining this special bond. So when you are able to, for the past year, you've shunned yourself for not being, like, you've been like, shame, like, you can't do that, you can't do it. And then your body gets into this habit of like, no, you can't do this, and then all of a sudden you can. But it's like, sometimes it can cause this unhealthy relationship with sex, because it's supposed to be this really beautiful thing that's under the eyes of God, like it's for God and for His graces. And when we try to cohabitate and try not to fall, we're teaching each other that like, oh, like we can live together for a whole year and never have sex, and it's like that's not what's supposed to happen actually. So
and I think it's kind of like when you cohabitate, I think it's kind of like you're fooling yourself. And I'm not saying that people who cohabitate are fools, but I feel like it's like you're playing house. You're acting as though you're married in all the ways except that marital bond that is, the big one. So I think it's very difficult in that sense. You're cooking together, you're eating together, spend a lot of time, obviously, but you're not married, you're not bonded in that marital act.
Yeah, and Shannon and I have talked, another one of my friends, about this whole situation, and it's once that you, and we'll talk about this when we talk about betrothal, but like with engagement, there technically you still can get it out. Like you can get engaged and then be like, no. And so if you move in with someone just because you're engaged, there's a chance that you're going to break up. Yeah. And if you continuously move in with people, and then you break up, you've now taught it's easier to just break up when things get hard, because you can move out of that situation, which is good. If we were to get married and then something bad happened, and like, you never should feel trapped where you're living, is basically what I'm trying to say. If you get engaged, you move in, and like horrible things are happening, you should leave. But absolutely, you shouldn't be training yourself that every time you get in a fight, you can just move out and end it all. When we get married, we're going to fight. We fight now. And like, I can't just be like, I'm just going to pack up my things and go because you didn't unload the dishwasher today. Like, shame.
What you to want to do the dishes.
So you shouldn't be training yourself to think that you can just like hop from person to person. Like, you should have respect for them, and you should love them, and you should want to, if you truly love them and it's a healthy relationship, you should want to find ways to communicate better, so you're not fighting and you don't feel this need to leave.
And I think there's a lot of beauty in not cohabitating. I really think, because through those struggles, you're growing tremendously. You're having to you're having to adjust. You're having to really die to yourself in small ways each and every time, because we don't live with each other. No. So logistics are very difficult. So I've been having to do a lot with communication. My communication has not been great.
He lives very independently, which is good.
And I was just talking with Father Crow about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when we were at dinner, I was kind of having like a moment. Like, I was talking with Father Crow, I think you texted me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think she expected me to be home by now, or be at her place. And he's like, oh really? Do you have to go? I'm like, I mean, we have the food. I was like, I don't think I could, we got our food here. But, and he's like, well, why do you think this occurred? Because I was like, I've been struggling with communication and stuff. And Father Crow was like, why do you think this is a struggle for you? What are you holding on to? And I was like, crap, I'm really fighting for drastically trying to hold my independence through this relationship where that's not what I'm supposed to be doing at all.
And I'm not suffocating him, guys.
No.
I don't give you anything, honestly. You're allowed to have as much independence as you want.
Yeah. No, but you're merging two lives together.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't want to be solely independent where I don't need to communicate with you on anything I'm doing throughout the day. I should at least be letting you know, hey Kendra, I'm going to be going to X, or I'm going to go visit my grandparents. I'm going to do this. And not leave you completely in the dark, you know? And I think I really, just reflecting on that the past few days, I really think I've been really trying to hold on to my independence, my radical independence in a unhealthy way, because we've talked about communication several times and stuff, but still continued to be an issue. And I really reflected on that. It was like, you're not ready to die to yourself right now, and you need to put that part of you to death right now, because you need to communicate with her. You need to be valuing her time and stuff, just like she values yours, because you communicate very well. You tell me, well, I might say a little too much. Kendra goes, is it okay to buy food today?
Okay, you got to give context.
I
know. I forgot my lunch, and I was super embarrassed that I forgot my lunch sitting on the counter, just a waste, an absolute waste. So it wasn't really me asking for permission. I almost needed validity, or for someone to say, yeah, it's okay to
buy food,
go buy food even though you forgot food.
Yeah.
Because I think it was in my head, I was like, I forgot my food. I deserve to starve. I don't know why, but in my head, I was like,
I've done that.
Well, I guess I'm just not eating today. And everyone was like, why aren't you eating today? And it's I forgot my lunch at home. And they're like, Panera's across the street. And I was like, yeah, but I had food and I didn't bring it. And so shame on me. I
totally get that.
And so I was like, Mark, do you think is
it okay
if I just
yeah.
Even though I had food at home,
because I think that asking if it's okay was less of asking for permission and asking is this logical?
Yeah.
Is this
But I do ask you a lot. I do anything.
But Kendra's been really good with communication and just reflecting on that. I've definitely not been. I'd say, before last week, this week, I made a much better effort. But beforehand, I would just do things, not think of texting her where I'm going or what I'm doing most of the time, and that's not something you want to do, especially in this stage of our engagement.
Yeah.
So that's a big logistical thing, because I go from work back to my house, or I go from work to her apartment, or work to see my grandparents, work to whatever it is. We don't, you don't wake up next to each other and check
what's
in
the game plan?
Exactly. You're not able to make a game plan. You don't go to bed with a game plan because you're, going to sleep together, or you don't have these logistical things that help you out, So it's really caused me to have to grow in that way, for sure.
That's really cool to hear, because we haven't actually talked about that with Father Crow. So I'm tearing up a little bit that you said that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a big thing for you.
Oh yeah.
So, that was cool.
Yeah. No,
I'm just gonna watch that.
Yeah. Father Crow, shout out to Father Crow, Diocese of Altoona Johnstown Vocations.
You're gonna save us.
Yeah.
No, we're good.
Father Crow's awesome.
But how we've been going through this is, first, when you do get engaged, you're supposed to go meet with your priest, and then he'll have you take one of those quizzes. So we both take one, and then they compare answers.
They call it a focus quiz too.
Yeah, it's called a focus quiz, and it's really good. And we're gonna be meeting with Father George to compare our responses soon.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, you schedule a time to go to wedding prep classes. And so that was our first step of, okay, we're engaged. We got to get along. We got to figure out how to communicate beyond, because when you're dating and you're engaged,
it's entirely two different things.
Both are different, and it's different than marriage too. And it's because we don't see each other every day.
Yeah.
We try to see each other every day, but like when you're dating, we definitely didn't see each other every day, and it's just, yeah, you're having to merge your life, and it's like,
I mean, because you,
we need to learn, like, I don't even know what they're called, like, resolution skills, like, or how to fight without fighting, and how to like come to an agreement, and just compromise. In a compromise, like healthy, I don't know, healthy communication. I totally agree. So we first did wedding prep classes, which if we were to be truly honest about it, I don't want to bash anyone, so let's not say where we did our wedding prep classes.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So we did our wedding prep class, and because of COVID, I honestly think I do want to blame a little bit on COVID. It normally was a weekend where you would spend the whole weekend doing these classes, but instead, because of COVID, they did 3 classes. We met on Tuesdays.
Yeah, on Tuesday nights.
And yeah, there's only 3, and there was a lot of information to cover. And so we would watch these videos really quickly, and then we'd get sent home with a ton of homework, and we were having to go through some really difficult topics in the book by ourselves. And when we say that we don't live together, that meant we were meeting at 5:30 in the morning at my apartment. So at the apartment at the apartment I was currently living at, and him living with his parents, we didn't have anywhere individual to go. Yeah. So at my apartment complex, they have these meeting rooms, and the only time that we could find time to sit down and do this was 5:30 in the morning. We would meet in this conference room and cry and discuss and like it was so hard and emotionally taxing to like go through that with, and there was nobody there. There was nobody at the table saying, whoa, you're just really exhausted, and it's 5:30, and like maybe we shouldn't talk about this now, but like that was hard for us.
Because I feel like again, I'm not gonna name names or bash anyone, but like I feel like it was something that was an imposition.
It was almost like we needed to check a box. We needed to host a wedding prep class. We had these couples that need to get this off and like checked off. But Mark and I aren't here for a check off. We like wanted a really quality
a deep dive
class
into what is going on. What does the church teach about the sacrament of marriage? What are we supposed to?
We were all in.
And I remembered like almost every class. It was like we're gonna do we're gonna go through X, Y, and Z so we can get out before 8:50. It's like, why are we worried about
this? This is we're gonna be together forever.
Yeah, it's like why are we worried about the time right now?
At the time we were both 23, and it's like, okay, so we should be together for at least 60 years, at least, because that would be like, what, 83?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're definitely gonna live past that. I have to be with you for that long, and they're just like, we can teach you everything you need to know for the next 60 years in 1 hour increments 3 times. I'm like, no, you can't.
It was rough.
So that was our first step, and it wasn't.
And to be fair to this, I mean, they're good people, and they were doing their
best. For sure.
They were doing their best. But it was just not. I think we were expecting something a little deeper.
And there are wedding retreats that other dioceses were doing.
Renew the I Do.
Yes.
Yeah, Renew the I Do is a big one.
His brother and sister-in-law did that, and they said it was literally life-changing.
Life-changing,
So when we did ours, I was crying. We left that first one. I was like, I don't want to go back. I didn't.
I remember that.
I was so upset. I was like, this is not what we signed up for. Like, this is going to be really hard. So I recommend that you really think about where you want to do your wedding prep classes, and if you can do a retreat style and just really submerge yourself into that weekend and
the intent of what you're doing.
Why are you doing this? Like, it shouldn't be to get married we have to do this. Don't see it as a check box. See it as training for the job that you're gonna have for the rest of your life. I have to be his spouse forever, okay? Until we go to heaven, and then we'll just be best buds. But until then, I want to be with him, and I want to do it in the best way I possibly can.
Exactly.
And I want him to do the best that he can.
And you want to be prepared to do that. You want the tools, you want the knowledge, you want the insight on how to be the best spouse you can be. The best. I don't want us to fight. Husband, the best wife,
Limit as much fighting, but communicate. We don't want to not. So some people are like, well, the solution to not fighting is just don't talk about it. And that's not us. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
generally try to talk about it before we part ways to go to bed, That's always a big one. I think that's always been good when we try to figure it out before I have to go home or you have to go home.
Yeah, so
that's always been helpful.
We really needed that. So we also have some mentor couples. I feel like officially we have James and Meredith.
Yeah, officially.
But we also have way more than just James and Meredith. Like reflecting on that, like we have a lot of couples that I feel like have been mentoring us.
Oh, for sure. Agree? No, absolutely. I mean, we talk to Matt and Meredith all the time. We're very close with them. I've gone to, early on in the engagement, I went to Chris's house a few times late night. I was like, Chris, like, are you up?
I remember when we first started fighting, Mark was so worried that we were fighting a lot.
Yeah.
And we weren't fighting a lot. We were just, to me, I was like, oh, we're fighting. And Mark was like, I don't think we're supposed to be fighting. And like, he was so worried. He was like, why are we fighting?
It was very new. I'd never seen my parents fight in my whole life. Like, I just, there might be like a small.
Sam and Chris, if you're listening,
it is beautiful.
You shouldn't scream in front of your children.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful that you didn't. But because of that, he was like, we're not supposed to fight. Why are we fighting?
Yeah, I was like, why is this happening right now? I don't think this is part of the manual. But yeah, so I'd just text Chris and be like, hey man, are you up? And he's like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, I need some advice. And so I'd go to Chris's house and him and Melanie would give me some advice and be like, yeah, but like, dude, we still fight right now. They're like, these things happen, man. It's normal. It's normal to fight sometimes, but you gotta learn how to do it in a loving way, in a way that's not nasty and it's godly, because there's gonna be a disagreement, and a fight doesn't mean screaming. A fight could mean, hey, like, I disagree with that. Can we talk about it? But I think the word fight, I'm just having this thought now. I feel like we overuse the word fight. Like, not us, but society. I feel like fight, because fight sounds so aggressive, because I think a lot of ours, I would call disagreements.
Because we've had fights.
Yeah. Oh, we've had emotional fights.
Yeah.
There's also disagreements. Don't talk about Fight Club. But we have disagreements, So I think it's important to make a distinction as well when you're talking about these things, because there are fights, but there's also disagreements,
and there's been discussions. We haven't even had a disagreement at all, but so we have mentor couples. Even Cassie and Luke, I feel like, just like watching Cassie go through how to be a future stay-at-home mom and like how they do that as a couple, I think has been huge for me, at least. And like,
no, Luke's a good example as well. Like, he's a good father. He's a very loving father, very supportive husband.
So we have a lot of couples.
A lot of great couples.
We look up to.
Yeah.
And ask questions. Matt and Meredith taught us about Cadbury eggs and.
Indeed they did. That might be a story for another time though too.
Yeah, we can save it.
Because that would be like I feel like if we went into that, that'd be like a long, drawn out thing. But yeah.
So some difficulties though that, even though we did wedding prep classes and we have mentor couples and we're hoping to go to a retreat soon and we don't cohabitate, things still suck sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think it's important. Yes, I will. But I think it's important to be honest, be open and honest. And like Kendra said, engagement's not all sunshine and rainbows.
It is fun.
If it is. Like, there's, there's tons of fun stuff. I mean, we... Like,
popcorn tastings.
Don't get us wrong. Like, we have way more fun and enjoy each other's time way more than we argue or fight. So that's definitely not what we're saying, that we fight 24/7. But at the same time, it is difficult, because I love Matt's analogy, and you can do the piece of the puzzle analogy. Okay. But I love Matt Freeman's analogy. He said, Mark, when two people are getting married and you're engaged, it's like you're merging two highways together with no merging lanes. There's going to be crashes, And I thought that analogy was so great, because you are merging two lives together that have lived drastically different, have different perspectives on many things, whether it's food, money, whatever it is. There's many different perspectives. You have to
clean the beard hair off
the sink. Beard hair, I'm still... Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of hair in your shower.
There is, yes.
There's female hair. But yeah, so there are going to be difficulties, and it's just good to be open and honest with that, and not try to pretend that everything's not what it is.
Yeah.
So I feel like with wedding planning, it's been good, but also there's been difficult times because communication, I think, is a big one.
When we say like wedding planning, I think it's more than just like I think a lot of people physically think about like wedding, like the wedding, but planning just like marriage has been hard. Like the merging of two highways just in general is hard. Like the actual prep for us being together.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, no, I totally agree with that. But again, like with that stuff, I think just even planning the event itself too, the reception and the wedding, that is difficult because there's a lot of logistics to figure out.
And there's a lot of people who want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, when you do that, I think one thing we did a good job of kind of coming back to is remembering that it's our day and not other people's day.
And it's our marriage.
And our marriage. So.
And our family. We have to pick us.
Yeah. No,
that's hard.
That's for sure.
So I guess like if we had to be more specific about some difficulties that I would just like, I don't know, give a little bit of advice to people when they're preparing for marriage. First, Melanie Smith recommended a book to me from Kimberly Hahn. It's called Chosen and Cherished. And I'm on chapter 4 right now, and I like wish someone would have gave it to me the first week of engagement, or even like before we took the rings, because it teaches you about being a Proverbs 31 woman and just prepares you and talks to you about like what that looks like, and it is so good. It's pink, which was a turn off for me. I saw this book, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know about everyone else who's listening, but I look at books and I do judge them by the cover, and it's like pink and purple and all. I was like, oh, this is probably gonna be some softy book, like, and it has been so good. And
Kimberly Hahn came in with a hammer.
She did. She was like, Kendra, shame.
Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah, if she's listening, she won't be listening.
No.
But
Never.
There's no way.
Never.
But her book's really good. So I would recommend that, and I think both of us have been reading a lot more in the past couple months, and whether it's related directly to our marriage or not, we've both been working so much harder to become more knowledgeable about our faith and what that looks like as a man versus a woman. And so like Exodus has been huge for him, and reading this book has been big for me, and just understanding that we don't actually know everything. So can you scroll back up?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
I gotcha.
But yeah, I think that's one way you can prepare. And working on this communication is when Mark says like be honest, you need to be honest. My friend Natalie always says, she taught me radical honesty. She's like, sometimes you need to have a radical honest moment, and you ask consent first before you do it. You look at them and you say, hey, can I be radically honest with you? And it's usually not that I feel hurt by this. It's more of like, for example, let's say I was telling Mark that he was being inconsiderate, or I want him to consider something in the future. Okay, but we miscommunicated, and for him, he could be like, can I be radically honest with you? When you said this is how I perceived it, and I'm not saying that this is what you said. This is just like this is the perception that I have, and I want to clear the air. Like, what does this even mean? Or like Natalie and I, she has really nice knives. I don't think she'll care if I share this story. She has some really nice knives at our apartment. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would actually accidentally end up in the dishwasher. I don't know who did it. And so she had a radically honest moment with me. She was like, hey, can I be radically honest with you? And I was like, yeah, why? And I thought it was going to be huge because she was like radically honest, and she used the phrase like, I'm going to be radically honest. And I was like, oh no. She's like, I noticed that some of my really nice knives ended up in the dishwasher. And she didn't say like, shame on you. She said, is there anything that we can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, like, maybe we just wash all the knives by hand, because certain ones could go in the dishwasher and they look very similar to the other ones. And that's basically what was happening. There was a mix mash of which ones could get washed and which ones couldn't. So she's like, we could just not wash it. She's like, we could wash all of them by hand. And she meant that in a loving way. She's like, I'll literally start washing them by hand. Like, I don't care. Or do we need to label them? Like, I want, or she's like, do you really know which ones aren't supposed to go in? And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I was like, I'm going to be radically honest with you. I don't see the difference. Can you please show me which ones are different? They all have black handles with these, like, little silver dots.
And they're about the same shape.
They're almost all the same shape. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And sure enough, on the blade, there is, like, this little label. And, like, the ones that are nice have a different logo on them. But I didn't know that before this conversation. Yeah. And you're like, oh, they were just knives. And I'm like, but that's what causes fights in a marriage, is when someone disrespects someone else's things.
Or even a perception of disrespect.
Yes, right? Of like, why aren't you meeting my expectation? Yeah. These knives aren't supposed to be in the dishwasher. Like, why aren't you, like, meeting this need? And so I think just being radically honest about how you're feeling, and you should not hide it, because sometimes I want to hide it, and Mark knows that. I'm very honest with him almost all the time. I feel like I'm 98% honest, and there'll be this 2% chance where I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I say it or do I not? And he just looks at me and he's like, just say it.
Yeah,
like, just say it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's a good point you picked on, because I think a lot of people, people perceive disrespect where there was no intent of disrespect, right? And I think it all comes back to expectations. I think the person that really got me thinking about expectations a lot was actually my brother John. This is before we even met you. But John, I forget, we were talking about it, because I'm very close with my brother John, as I'm close with all my siblings, but me and my John are exceptionally close. And he had this, I think we were both in college still, and I was visiting him at Shippensburg. And he had this thing written up in his notes, and it was actually pretty profound and pretty knowledgeable, and it was about expectations. He said that most all arguments arise from spoken or unspoken expectations that are not met. And I think that is so true, because sometimes
we can't meet an expectation if they don't even know about it.
Exactly. And so, like, I think it's so important to lay out your expectations, because I think we all do this. I know I've done it. I know you've done it. Have these unspoken expectations,
and they don't meet them.
And they don't meet them. So
and
now
you're mad.
Now we're upset, And at the same time, we need to remember, well, did we really say this? Did we really say we're doing X at X time? Or I really expected you to
do X.
Yeah, I put the knives in the wrong place. I think that if I'm remembering correctly, I think that was me.
I don't even know. It could have been both of us.
Could have been, but there was with no knowledge of that expectation. Yeah. Right. So I think it's so important, before you get in a fight, before you get in a disagreement, say, "Hey, I'd like to talk about this, and I think this is an expectation I had, and I feel like I expressed it, but maybe I didn't. So could we talk about this?" Yeah. Because a lot of it comes from those expectations we have that either the other person's not fulfilling or we didn't communicate ourselves. So it's so important. It's like just a piece with communication to express your expectations. Because when we move in together, eventually, after the wedding, she right now washes her laundry
once a week. At least.
Well, you're bedding. Don't you do it like twice a week?
I wash my sheets and my pillowcases once a week.
Yeah. And so for me,
I do.
That's going to be a transition, and we might have to find some middle ground there.
No, I'll still wash them.
Maybe she'll just wash them.
Yeah, I'll just wash them.
But anyway,
that's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, try to pull an easy example. Sorry. So anyway, but there's going to be something that I'm not thinking of right now that we're going to have to talk about, because she has an expectation of washing those weekly, and for me, I do not wash my sheets every week. I probably wash them
once a month, maybe.
Once, if we're lucky, probably.
Don't out yourself like that.
I'm gonna out myself. I didn't. I just not something I did that often. So it might be a long time before I wash my sheets, and So when we get married and move in together, we need to come up with the expectation on how often are we going to wash the sheets? How often are we going to do X? How often do we clean the house? How often? Because we're not going to know. So you have your expectations in this engagement section, right? Because I live at my folks' house, so there's a completely different expectation of how you do things, right? You might take your shoes off at my house, and you might take your shoes off at your house. But there's some people, you don't need to take your shoes off in their house.
Yeah.
Right? And so somebody who doesn't take their shoes off in their own house might come to mine or yours and walk them around. And somebody, not us, but like someone might be put off by that. And be, hey man, can you please take your shoes off? Like, seriously. I can see my parents doing it, but the point's made, right? So two separate houses, two separate lives that we're living in right now have entirely two separate sets of expectations. And when we come together, we have to recreate. We have to
everything. It's not just living. It's like food, money, the budgets.
Absolutely everything must be recreated in a cohesive way that's us. Mm-hmm. And it's not her expectation, my expectation now. Because now when we get in that covenant, sacramental bond of marriage, we're going to have to be one. Be one in every single way. So we're going to have to come up with new expectations for how we live our life, how we raise our kids, everything. Yeah.
Which I think ties into the merging of two lives. And I feel like we can just hop into wedding planning, because I think that the planning of our wedding was a huge experience of merging our two families. Mm-hmm. So with wedding planning, I think it was your mom that told us, like, what are your must-haves? Like, both of you need to have your must-haves. Yeah. And so it was like, well, my must-have was I wanted everyone to be in the same house getting ready together. And I wanted to have a house on the property because we have tons of people from out of state. Because I'm from Illinois. Yep. He went to the Citadel. Almost everyone is coming from not Pennsylvania. We have 3 people. That's it.
That are in the party?
That are in Pennsylvania. That's it. That's 3 out of 14. Yeah. Including us. Like, that's a lot of people coming from different states. And I was like, it'd just be easier if we were all together. And I knew it'd be easier on them. It'd be easier on me, just knowing that we were all in one space, like, getting ready, and we could just, like, get on a bus and go. And that was, like, my must-have. Mm-hmm. And his must-have was, like, he wants it in a church, which I also wanted it in a church. But he was like, I want it to be a really beautiful church. I want it to be reverent. I want it to, like, Yeah. There was just, like, certain traditional pieces that you really wanted.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point, and it's a key part that you need to have a few must-haves, and you need to communicate those and say, like, this is a hill I'm willing to die on.
And these ones I'm not.
And these ones I'm not. And we can totally talk about and find some compromise.
And you cannot die on every hill. No. I think is also what I've learned is, like, certain things, it's like, if it doesn't matter to you, then don't make it matter to you. Yeah. If it doesn't need to matter, then it doesn't need to matter. Mm-hmm. Like, if it didn't originally cross your mind, then it's probably not a big deal. And it can just, it's a little detail that if it happens that day, that's cool. Yeah. So we did establish some must-haves, which did help a little bit with the whole merging of two families, because we didn't know this, like, right off the bat. Like, I want to say there were must-haves that we didn't realize were must-haves until they arose, and then, of course, there were some, like, disagreements. But we're making it through. And finding a compromise has definitely been, it's hard, because I think, even though I wasn't a Pinterest girl, so I didn't have a wedding board ready. I haven't had a dream wedding dress or venue or anything, like, physically put together. But I think as girls, we are kind of trained to have a dream wedding in our mind, at least. Yeah. And so there were certain things where I was like, I just always dreamed it would be like this, or I always thought it would be like this, or we romanticize it because of Hollywood, and I'm like, I'm a Disney princess, why isn't it like this? And it's like, and it's hard because, like, there are things that we had to compromise on that I didn't love. If it was my way, we would still be having pizza at this wedding. We joke about this all the time. I'd be like, I really wanted pizza at our reception.
And that was the thing I think you found eventually was a thing you wish would have been a must-have from the beginning. Yeah.
I do. But I didn't realize it was that important to me until it was, like, too late.
And I was really, like, I love pizza. Don't get me wrong. But I have it so often that it's the significance of it
being at our wedding.
Would be lost at our wedding. You know, for me, when she said that, I was like,
at a wedding?
First of all, I was so surprised that Kendra said that. I don't know why, but I was like, Kendra wants pizza at her wedding. I don't even see her eat pizza that much.
Which is what makes it special, I think.
Yeah. But I was like, I'm really not feeling pizza at a wedding. I don't know, it's just, but.
We did compromise on the food.
Yeah.
And I think that was one thing I was willing to not die on a hill on, because, his family has traditions, my family has traditions, and pizza is not on that list. That was just me.
Yeah.
And I think my family would have been okay with pizza, but it definitely wouldn't have been their first choice. It wouldn't have been your parents' first choice. It wouldn't have been your first choice. Yeah. It would have only been my first choice. And I think recognizing that, like, ultimately no one's going to remember the food. I just hope, and I think we sat down and I realized it of, all that matters is I'm going to marry Mark in the eyes of God. And if we can have a ton of people come to the church and just see how beautiful it is, and we walk, like, every person walks out knowing God just a little bit more, that is what I want.
That is.
And so if there's no pizza at the reception, I'm going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Do I still want pizza? Yes. Am I secretly thinking about maybe ordering a pizza just for me to the wedding? Maybe.
That might be a game plan.
Will there be a surprise Doggy's Pizza? Maybe.
Oh my gosh! I swear, if Doggy's Pizza,
don't swear. He doesn't swear.
But
he doesn't swear. He says,
Doggy's
"Oh my,
Pizza.
Really? Doggy's Pizza."
Doggy's Pizza, for the record, has got to be
the best
worst
pizza in State College
I've ever had.
Hands
down. But Kendra
I'll let
loves
you talk about Waffle Shop.
I know.
And say it was the best place. I didn't say anything.
I was expecting you to say something.
I didn't find
Kendra
it.
doesn't like the Waffle Shop.
But I let you go, so you can let me have Doggy's Pizza. Anyway, so we did find compromises, and now we did find a local place that's gonna do our catering, which was, I did want someone local, so that was like good, and the people, he's so nice.
He's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah, really good. So I felt good about going through with that, because even though it's not pizza, I felt great knowing that we were supporting a local place, a really great person and family, and somebody who
genuinely had our best interest in mind.
Yes, yeah, and he still messages us and just,
he's a great guy.
So I was like, human relationships more important than pizza.
Absolutely.
So that was a compromise. But then there's still moments where it was hard to compromise. The pizza one really wasn't that hard. Like, it was bad, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, like, it wasn't too.
Because I had a feeling pizza wasn't gonna fly. Like, in my gut, I was like, "There's no way we're having pizza at this reception," but I'm gonna try. So I wasn't devastated. But yeah, there's definitely been moments.
That's for sure. And then you just talk about it. You try to see, okay, where can we find some middle ground? Because it's okay to find middle ground.
And do you want to talk about? You kind of hit on it with the whole independence piece, but I think the biggest change for you for the wedding was realizing that, like, it was, I don't know, just realizing it was our day,
I see what you're saying.
Like, recognizing it was our family, and that whole, like...
No, absolutely. I think, for...
Like, what the pivotal... I don't remember what moment it was, but I remember you being like, yeah, you know what, maybe I should have been like...
Yeah, because I think there were some things that you really valued, and I also valued, that were, I don't know how to put this, not being taken into consideration as much as it should have been. And there was times where I don't think I backed up our point of view on things. There's some things that people wanted and that we didn't want, absolutely didn't want. And so there's times where I didn't defend it as much, and then you're like, I really need to remember this is about us at the end of the day. And these people weren't trying to
sides.
And these people weren't trying to, like,
hurt us
encroach or do something that was about them. It was not a selfish matter whatsoever when it came to the people. They were thinking of what was best for us, but in their lens, right? So what's best for us in their lens is entirely different from what's best in our lens. And so I forget what it was, but we had a discussion. I forget, you said something, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not picking us right now. And so from then on, I tried to do a better job with that and put my foot down a little more. Size 16 loafers.
Yeah, and I think that why I wanted to tie wedding planning to the whole merging of families was this was a prime growing moment for us, and recognizing like, yeah, this is a planning an event, but we've noticed just in the past 3 days how hard it is to merge two different types of families. My family is very, like, when it came to holidays, I feel like we knew stuff pretty early on because our family was so big, and there were so many people coming in from different places, so I always knew when things were, like, constantly. But his family, you guys celebrate even the littlest things, which is beautiful. Like, you celebrate every cousin's birthday if you can, and like, we don't do that. Like, we don't. Like, we don't really do birthday parties, or, you know, we do things with, like, our like, little core group, like, parents and kids, but we don't do, like, aunts, uncles, and stuff. So you celebrate more often. And it's not as, like, scheduled, and, like,
sometimes.
Because, like, we only see each other on holidays, so it's very, like,
we need
scheduled.
To organize it.
But his family sees each other more, so it's not as, like,
because there's no necessity to plan something at, you know, my aunt's house or my grandma's house or my house a month out, because, well, you know, it's 2 weeks away or a week away. What's everyone doing? You
like,
know,
it's just this, like, unspoken understanding that we'll eventually decide what we're doing, but there is going to be something. And I'm, like, not used to that.
and it's good in its own way, right?
It is,
but we're in that stage where we've got to think about things long term.
So what does that mean for us? Yeah, like, what? Yeah, like, and Kendra doesn't do well with last minute planning.
Yeah, and last minute for Kendra is not last minute for me, right? Yeah. 2 weeks out, I'm like, oh, that's tons of time. I'm like, oh, word, like, I've been given tremendous amounts of time to think and plan this out, but Kendra,
I have a dog.
You have a dog, and you're more, I feel like, time-wise is a little different for the two of us, and you need a lot of time to prepare.
Yeah. And I say yes to a lot of things, so I'm very scheduled in the sense of, like, I fill my time usually. Yeah. And so that's, like,
I think we both fill our time a lot.
Yeah, so, like, this weekend or next weekend we're going to be moving around a lot because we said yes to all these things. Yeah. And our Saturday. Easter is going to be wild.
Yeah, it'll be good.
But it's good. But we're learning, like, I remember saying, like specifically to you of, like, please, we have to learn what our family will do for our families instead of being like his family, my family, his family, my family. It's our family is going to go to these families because ultimately they're both going to be our family. So, like, my family is his family and vice versa. So, like, how are we going to balance that?
Yeah. You know, holidays and all the other things.
Yeah. So, just remembering when we say it's your day for the wedding, it's also your marriage and your family, and all the things that you learned while trying to plan a wedding, they're going to come in handy.
Absolutely. You know? And you know, I think I've said this before, and I can't remember, you may have too, but, like, every time we have a disagreement or an argument, whatever it is, and we get it resolved and done, and it, you know, there's a lot of mercy and love afterwards, you know.
I usually cry because I'm so happy and I love him that much. It's true.
It is, because you don't
I don't want
to fight you. It's not enjoyable to fight somebody. It's not enjoyable to be in an argument, and when you figure that out, you get a lot closer because you have to humble yourself. You have to admit to your faults. You have to you know, vow to do better. You know, you have to do all these things that are really good and really sacrificial in nature. Yeah. You know, humility, vowing to do better. Those things are really, really important, because if you don't apologize, you don't take ownership, you don't do those things, that's not good. That's not good for a relationship. Yeah.
There's been a lot of blessings with that then.
Oh my gosh.
And so if we had to leave you with some blessings.
Sorry, I just remembered the thing I was thinking. I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry.
I don't know where he's
going.
I
was saying, like, we're not going to have the same argument twice.
Yeah, we try really hard not to do that.
Yeah, like, and I don't think we have. Like, anytime we've resolved a dispute of some sort, it's been resolved. And so, like...
Okay, but that's not how it started. We used to bring up old stuff.
But that was, like, first few months. Yeah. I'm talking about engagement.
Oh, yeah. So make sure you like, that would be a piece of advice. Once you resolve a fight, it stays there. Mm-hmm. Natalie was like, whatever happens in Boston has to remain in Boston, meaning if you're fighting about Boston, you fight in Boston, and then when the fight's over, you're done with Boston, and
She's you can win.
She's not from Boston. That's just where she did her undergrad.
Oh, that's right.
But it's like, if you're fighting about Las Vegas, you don't go to Boston and bring up Boston in Las Vegas. You fight about just Las Vegas, mm-hmm. you know? Like, you remain in that fight, and once it's resolved, you forgive each other, and you don't hold a grudge.
Yeah, and I think that's important to resolve that. And you do a tremendous job of this when we're in a dispute. Is there anything else that we need to discuss right now? Is there anything else that might cause an issue in the future?
Like, what can we do to prevent this from happening again?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's a really, really good thing. Mm-hmm.
And I always try to not say the words you. I usually am like, I'm feeling this way. I did this. Mm-hmm. As a result, this happened. And I am, like, I know that I did this. Like, don't point fingers at each other. I try really hard not to hold that grudge. Mm-hmm. And, that's important.
Yeah, so what are some key takeaways that we can recommend to people in our such, tremendous time and wise years of engagement? Okay. I'm kidding.
First, I would say, so my dad and I talked about this the other day. I was crying in a parking lot.
As one
I
does.
Promise our engagement has been so awesome. Like, last night we had a great time. It's so good. Like,
it's been really good.
We have some really cool games that we've gotten recently that are just for couples, so we get to play like these like dig deeper games with each other, and it's so good. I love it. But we're radically honest on this podcast, and I was crying in a parking lot to my dad. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm fighting with him over little things. And why are we fighting about these little things? I don't know what to do. And he was like, Kendra, you and Mark have been really busy recently. And I was like, okay, and I'm like, this has nothing. I asked him for advice on this issue. And he was like, you've been really busy recently. And I was like, okay, Dad, that doesn't help that we're fighting over presents that came in the mail. Like, what does this mean? And he was like, well, since you've been both really busy, all of the time that you've spent together, you've been planning, scheduling, because Mark and I do Salvation Group and we're planning the wedding. Basically, every night that we see each other, it is kind of a business, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, we Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, we're
parents
planning
conference.
Yes, we're playing small groups and we're trying to do this and
expand Salvation Group
and like our wedding. Yeah. My sister's wedding. Focus. He's like doing all his
classes.
All the classes that we have to do. And so basically all of our time, even though we do spend a lot of our days together, they're not one-on-one together. It's usually at a small group, at someone's house, at a betrothal ceremony. We spend a lot of time with other people, and if we're not, we're just planning for the next thing. Like almost always, we're just planning and planning and planning. And he's like, I know you definitely haven't been doing anything fun, and you haven't been loving each other in the way that you did before. Like, when you were dating, you would make sure all of your homework was done, so when you did spend time together, you didn't talk about it. It was quality time. It was just about like doing something we both enjoy. And he was like, you guys need to start saying no to stuff. He's like, you guys have been doing way too much. And that he's like, so all the time that you had together, you're both so irritable and tired, you're fighting because you're tired and you're busy. And you're not...
I think you hit a great point there. And I think our busyness and our stuff hurt our communication, and I think I was a large part of that, just because talking about earlier, I wasn't prepared to be in a communicative state as is required in an engagement. Yeah. But I think when we're busy, a package comes in the mail, a present from an aunt that I don't even remember, happening, and then you see it and they're like, what the heck, Mark? Like, why? And I'm like, I don't even remember. Like, I thought you saw it. I don't know. Because we're always running. Yeah. So
his advice and a key takeaway from me, and I want to carry this into our marriage, and focus requires you to at least spend one night together, and I get why.
Oh, date night. Yeah. Because like, we're obviously going to spend nights together.
But like, having those times together is because we've gotten into this habit, and this is just a honesty thing. Like, last weekend we did decide to do a date night, but I remember, like, we were talking about Salvation Group on our date. You know, like we have to be very mindful of our time together and recognize and like really, it's like when you wake up in the morning and you spend those first 30 minutes with Jesus, you don't talk to Jesus about, okay, so my Excel sheet, it's not looking so good. Like, you know, you don't talk about business I haven't heard with that Jesus. Analogy. You know?
Yeah.
You're just talking to Jesus because you love Jesus and he's your best friend and you're building a relationship with them. And you're being real and honest. You're not talking about Excel sheets.
Yeah.
You know? And we need to do that. When we have our date nights, and I feel like we're getting better every time, is during this time, it's intentional, and it's not time to talk about Excel sheets and stuff. It's time to say, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why don't we just go do something fun and build a cool memory together and not talk about work?
Yeah.
You know, there is time where you need to talk about those things.
Oh, like, absolutely.
Every day.
Absolutely.
But you need to he reminded me of the importance of just doing those fun hobbies together and creating good memories. And they don't have to be expensive memories. No. They can just be small things.
Yeah, dedicate intentional time to one another. 100%. Yeah. I think that's a great takeaway. I think another big one, again, is, we've gone through a lot of them, but communication and expectations. You know, when you're in a engagement, you need to evaluate your communication level, because Kendra was there. Kendra was at that engagement communication level.
I am a TMI person. If you meet me, you will know my testimony fast.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. Not everyone needs to know everything about me, but I spill my beans.
Yeah.
It's true. It's bad. Yeah, it's bad. We're not supposed to tell everyone everything.
Yeah, but still. And you were there with the communication level that is required in an engagement. I definitely wasn't. You know, so you need to evaluate yourself and be honest with yourself. Yeah. And, you know, do a nightly examine and see what you're doing. And I think, so work on those communications. Tell them where you're going every step of the way, because then they're not like, where the heck is he? I thought we were having dinner right now. Yeah. You know, why the heck is he not at my house? We're supposed to have dinner right now. I'm going,
we're supposed to be wedding planning.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be,
I thought I'd come after lifting, and I don't, after lifting for me meant
anytime,
anytime after
and for
lifting.
Me it meant, directly at 5:30, he'll be here at 6.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'll just be here at some point this evening.
Yeah. And so just
that's a really
overly communicate, and set expectations. Hey, when we're at my house and my parents are here, like the expectation is I'd like to spend time with them, like together. And you're not opposed to that.
No.
But sometimes you need to set those expectations, right? Like, I love so much when Kendra and my mom are together in the same room, and I'm in the same room too. I'm there as well. But yeah, my dad, my mom, like us four are together. I thoroughly enjoy that time we spend with my parents, because I love my parents so much, and you're so close with them as well that it's great banter and just easy conversation. So expectations, communications is a big part. Oh, shoot, I forgot one. I was had one.
No. But that's important with the memories piece. It ties well to that of, I think one of our fights was, I thought it was so important that we just really, every single moment of this engagement, if there's a good moment that can be taken out of it, you should take it. Mm-hmm. When you do get a wedding gift from your registry in the mail, even though we don't live together, open it with that person. Mm-hmm. Soak up that. When we did our popcorn tasting, we ordered some different flavored popcorns, and we made it this elaborate tasting, and we didn't need to, but we did because
it's fun.
It was fun.
Yeah,
you gotta have something fun.
You got your glass of water to clean the palate between each bite, so that was really fun.
And so we really have been trying hard to find the joys in it, and those are blessings.
Yeah, and I think something we've started more recently, which I think we both identified was something we need to work on.
I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
Prayer.
Yes, because we both have a good prayer life independently.
Yeah, individually.
I've got my rosary in the morning and sometimes Divine Mercy, and you've got your scripture and prayer as well, and you do that a lot, and that's your thing. But we don't have a prayer life together.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who said something. You may have said something independently, and maybe somebody else asked me that, because I think I was talking. I can't remember, but my grandma always talks about the importance of praying together. It's like that is one of the biggest keys that my grandparents always talk about is you need to pray every day together for an intentional period. And so recently we've been praying together before we part ways at night, and in the morning if we work out or something before we start our day, if we get to see each other in the mornings, and it's just a quick
it's really fast.
Yeah, we just talk about what we're thankful for that day,
what we need prayer for,
and we continue to ask God to bless us, even to give us more faith, hope, and charity. Ask Him to give us some virtues, mercy, kindness, and things like that. And so those small things are so intentional, though, and I think they've had an impact so far. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's good. Man.
But, yeah. So, I think that's about it. Woo. Yeah. So, thank you very much for joining us on the Christ-Centered Life podcast. Please like, share, subscribe. Visit our website at thesalvationgroup.org. Instagram, _salvation_group. Facebook, The Salvation Group. Your page?
The Curly Crunchy Catholic.
Curly Crunchy Catholic, which is booming right now. Has more followers than our Salvation Group page.
I know.
But
it's not booming, but we're trying our best.
It's booming.
It's not.
But thank you very much for joining us. Hope this was helpful at all.
Ready?
What?
My turn.
Yeah, you got it.
I hope this podcast allows you to have a more Christ-centered life.
Outstanding.
Bow, bow, bow.
There we go.